Welcome to the new Have I Got a Story for You. It's been a long time, listeners, and we've missed you. We love hearing your voicemails and notes about our other shows, Beyond the Bookcase and Afternoons with Mimi, and we're thrilled to bring you an improved chapter of this podcast. We're sharing great stories from the Torah, Jewish texts, and other journeys. Enjoy child-friendly adaptations of important Jewish stories, all read by our calming narrators. For an extra special experience, you can also enjoy our stories on YouTube and social media with accompanying sleepy time visuals. Subscribe to all of our shows on your favorite podcast platform. Just search PJ Library. Today's story is about Naomi and her daughter-in-law, Ruth. Their story comes from the book of Ruth, which is traditionally read on the Jewish holiday of Shavuot. Naomi and her husband were hungry. Their sons were hungry. There was no food where they lived. Everywhere they looked, people were starving. Eventually, Naomi's husband died. More time went by, and people were still starving. Then, Naomi's sons declared that they wanted to be married. They met two women from another community, Orpah and Ruth. And even though they were so different, Naomi's grown children loved Orpah and Ruth. After they were married, the whole family lived together with Naomi. They looked for food. They took care of their house. Sometimes they sang together and danced. The hunger dragged on and on. Everyone tried to find food, but there was no grain. There were no melons or cucumbers or honey. For 10 years, the people were hungry. Then, one sad day, just like their father, Ruth's sons died. Now Naomi, Ruth, and Orpah were alone. They were desperate. There was still no food in Moab, where they lived. They had to get out of there. They had no husbands or sons, but they had each other. Naomi heard that people in her home city of Bethlehem did have food. They could go there. Naomi, Ruth, and Orpah quickly packed up and started to walk toward Bethlehem. But as they walked, Naomi started to think. She was from Bethlehem originally. Going there would be like going back home. But what about Ruth and Orpah? They weren't from Bethlehem. They were from Moab. And now they were leaving everything they'd ever known. Naomi knew they all had to talk together. There by the dusty road, Naomi sat down under a tree. Ruth and Orpah sat down too, close to her. "My daughters," Naomi said, "I love you both so much. You're like my own children. I'm going back home to Bethlehem, but what about you? I'm not your real mother, although I wish I was. My sons, your husbands, are dead. We're going far away from your home, Moab. I think you should turn back. Go home to your own mother's houses. Find new husbands so you can have money and food. Please, I love you so much that I'm begging you to do this." Tears flowed down Ruth and Orpah's faces. "I can't bear to leave you," Orpah cried. "This is best," Naomi said. looking into her face. "My life is hard, and if you stay with me, your life will be hard too. I don't have any more sons to be a husband to you. If you go back to your mothers, you can find new husbands." "I don't want to," Orpah said. "This is right," Naomi said firmly. "I know," Orpah murmured. She looked down at her lap, then stood up and hoisted her pack. Slowly, she stepped back on the road to Moab. As she walked away, she didn't look back. Ruth and Naomi watched her go, standing side by side and shading their eyes against the sun. "Now you, Ruth," Naomi said, "follow your sister-in-law." Ruth shook her head slowly from side to side. "No, please, Naomi, I can't. I love you too much. Let me go with you. Wherever you go, I'll go too. I'll live where you live. Your people in Bethlehem, they'll be my people too. Your God will be my God. I'll die with you, my beloved Naomi, and I'll be buried where you are." "Do you mean this, my daughter?" Naomi asked, holding both of Ruth's hands in hers. Ruth nodded, her eyes shiny with tears. "You have taken care of me all this time," Ruth said. "Your heart is my heart, and I won't leave you. Not now and not ever." "This journey will be long and hard," Naomi said. "We won't reach Bethlehem until it's time for the barley harvest." "I don't care," Ruth said. "I'll help you. We'll stay together no matter what." Naomi smiled. "That's what I want, too." Ruth stood up and held out her hand. Naomi took it and pulled herself up. She reached for her pack, but Ruth reached out and very gently took Naomi's pack out of her hands. She slung it over her own back, and Naomi smiled at Ruth. They walked on the road to Bethlehem for a long time, side by side. And just as Naomi promised, they arrived in time for the barley harvest. They had made it together. Naomi and Ruth resettled in Bethlehem and worked in the grain fields of Ruth's relative, Boaz. Boaz noticed how kind Ruth was to the other workers, as well as how kind and loyal she was to her mother-in-law. In the end, Ruth and Boaz married each other. Their marriage has a special twist. Their great-grandson is David, who becomes king of Israel. You'll hear a story about him in one of our future episodes.
This episode was written by Emma Carlson Burnett, narrated by Daniela Rabbani, and produced by Ali Thresher. All of our music is licensed from Epidemic Sound. For full episode credits, please go to pjlibrary.org/podcasts. For more child-friendly audio, just search PJ Library on your favorite podcast or audio platform.